Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're exploring consciousness, specifically through the lens of Brian cosmic computer ideas.
Right. The learner gave us Bothma's work, and we're really focusing in on how his model tackles consciousness, especially, within this idea of a simulated reality.
And the core of it, which is really fascinating, is this CP-GPU thing he talks about.
Exactly. The CPU is like the underlying code, right? Timeless, holding everything possible.
And the GPU.
That's the engine, the part that's actually drawing or rendering the reality we experience moment to moment.
What's cool is Bothma's background. He's not coming from, like, a standard physics department.
No, not at all. More driven by just deep curiosity about these huge questions. It gives him a pretty unique angle.
Yeah, it feels less constrained somehow. So today, just consciousness. How does Bothma see it fitting into this whole simulation picture? That's our mission.
Okay, let's jump in. So a really key point for Bothma is that consciousness isn't just some, accidental thing that pops out of complex brains.
Like an emergent property.
Right. He sees it differently. He thinks it's actually intrinsically part of the GPU's rendering process itself.
Okay, hold on. So it's not just that the simulation can have conscious beings in it?
No, it's more fundamental. It's like the rendering process involves consciousness, or consciousness is the experience of the rendering.
He used an analogy, didn't he? Like something about a UI.
Yeah, a user interface. The idea is consciousness could be how the simulation kind of experiences itself from the inside. It creates that sense of me, agency.
But it's all happening within the simulation's rules.
That's the framework, yes. The feeling of being you, your self-awareness. It might actually depend on the universe being this kind of rendered system.
Wow. That's it. Yeah, that makes you think. Is my feeling of being me just part of the graphics card's output, essentially?
It's a provocative question he puts out there for you, the learner. Is your consciousness just the way the simulation feels from the inside?
It makes me immediately think about the observer effect in quantum physics. You know, how looking at something seems to change it.
Definitely. And Bothma draws a direct line there. He suggests that consciousness isn't just a passive audience member in the simulation.
It's active.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
The act of you observing, of measuring something at the quantum level, that might be the very thing that forces the GPU to, pick an outcome.
To render one specific reality from all the possibilities stored in the CPU.
So your awareness isn't just passively recording, it's actually maybe triggering the rendering of what you observe.
So it's a bit like some interpretations of the Copenhagen view, where the observer is key.
It has echoes of that, for sure. Bothma's model provides a sort of how. Consciousness within the simulation could be this force that helps collapse possibilities into definite states.
Okay, so consciousness isn't just in the simulation, it's actively participating in its unfolding.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
And he takes it even further.
How so?
He speculates that consciousness, because it's this active observer, might actually be able to, influence or tweak the simulation.
Influence it, you mean like change the code?
Or maybe not the fundamental CPU code, but perhaps influence the GPU's rendering choices. He talks about consciousness as the interface.
The interface between us and the simulation.
Exactly. Our focus, our attention, maybe even our intentions. Perhaps they have a more direct effect on what gets rendered than we usually think.
So if consciousness is tied to the rendering, maybe concentrating our awareness could, I don't know, guide what shows up.
It's an intriguing possibility within his framework. It's not just about seeing what's simulated, but maybe interacting with the simulation process itself through our awareness.
Could that connect to things like intuition or sudden creative ideas, those moments that feel like they come from nowhere?
Bothma seems to hint that way. If consciousness is deeply linked to this whole informational structure, maybe intuition is like tapping into the CPU's potential more directly.
And that somehow nudges the GPU's output.
Perhaps subtly influencing what gets rendered into our perceived realities. It's a fascinating, though speculative idea.
It really reframes those kinds of mental events. Okay, what about the weirdness of quantum mechanics itself? Superposition, entanglement.
Ah, yes. Bothma looks at those through the simulation lens, too. He kind of frames them as potential glitches.
Glitches, like bugs in the software.
Or maybe rendering artifacts. Think about it.
Yeah.
If the GPU is working hard to create a smooth classical reality from underlying quantum code,
Then sometimes the code itself, the quantum weirdness, might sort of peek through.
exactly, like the rendering isn't perfectly seamless. A superposition, for instance, a particle in multiple states, might be like a rendering ambiguity.
An ambiguity that gets resolved when we look. when we observe.
That's the connection he makes. He links the observer effect, consciousness, or measurement directly to these glitches. Observing is like hitting render now on that specific spot,
Forcing the system to choose a state and display it.
compelling it to resolve the fuzziness. Yeah. It's a way of understanding quantum phenomena as features, or maybe limitations, of the simulation's rendering engine.
That's a really interesting interpretation. It takes some of the inherent strangeness and gives it a potential mechanism, I guess.
It does. And ultimately, this leads to both seeing consciousness as a kind of bridge
A bridge between what?
between the abstract code, the timeless information in the CPU, and the actual tangible world the GPU renders for us.
So our inner experience, thoughts, feelings, awareness isn't separate from the universe's computation.
It's completely interwoven with it. It's part of the process of reality actually becoming real for us.
Observation isn't passive viewing, it's somehow part of the creation process.
That's the core of it. Your consciousness isn't just watching the movie, it's interacting with the projector in Bothma's view. You're a participant.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive on consciousness in Bothma's model. We've seen it's not just biological.
Right, it's integral to the rendering, key to the observer effect.
It raises huge philosophical questions, ethical ones too, if we really are in a simulation.
Absolutely. And there's this tantalizing idea that consciousness might even influence the simulation, or that quantum effects are like rendering issues.
It definitely pushes you to rethink what consciousness even is, not just brain chemistry, but maybe something woven into the fabric of reality itself.
It's a powerful invitation from Bothma for you, the learner, and all of us listening, to reconsider existence, self-awareness, reality, all within this computational idea.
It leaves you with so much to mull over. And maybe a final thought for you, the learner. If consciousness is this active player, if our observation shapes reality in this model,
What does that mean for us? What kind of potential or maybe even responsibility comes with being an observer in this cosmic computer?
a big question indeed. Definitely something to keep thinking about. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.